know, I really hope for a bigger turnout. Let me start with the introductions first this morning. We have all of our audit managers and supervisors over here at the front of the room. I'm going to start by introducing everyone by district. We have, in the Weatherford District, Sharing.mov, the manager, Robin Bass, Heather Shryock, and Wendy Parker, the supervisors. In the Ada District, we have James Dickerson, the manager, Kelly Toney, and Darla Ellis are the supervisors. Faye Hopper is also a supervisor, but she was unable to be here this morning. In the Tulsa District, we have Janelle Enevolson, the manager. Carrie Carter, Kim Reed, and Melissa LaFoon are the supervisors. In the Metro District, we have Marla Latham, the manager, and John Brownell, the supervisor. And in the Duncan District, we have Ricky Branch, the manager. We are in the process of redistricting and sharing supervisors and auditors, so some of that wasn't an equal share there, but we all share together. Okay, let's get started. If you look at the slide, the class is divided into 3 segments. In the first part, we're going to talk about the situation and why we're all here. The second part, we're going to discuss the CEPA, which I know is why you are all here. And the last part will be over the financial statement. At the end of each segment, we will have a question and answer session as well as a break. And I think Mr. Jones mentioned that they'll pass a sign-in sheet around at the end, or after the last break, where you can get credit. Well, let's talk about the problem. Since 2000, Oklahoma has received $59 million and change in disaster relief for ice storms, floods, tornadoes, and some fires. It's lots of paperwork, and it's lots of requirements. FEMA paperwork alone can be so intimidating, even to us. Recently, we've issued some county reports with a lot of findings regarding counties not being in compliance and question costs. And I know that some of those terms are not things that you're familiar with. This is something that's new. So this morning we're going to go over all of that until you each feel comfortable with that. Because of these findings and instances of non-compliance, you could be in jeopardy of losing future funding. Federal funds are very important to our local governments, not only to help with disaster relief, but also to help with our local economies. What could happen if you were out of compliance and lost out on federal funds? Let's talk specifically about what grants you are receiving. Home grants, for instance. If you were to lose out on those grants, it could affect the quality of life for low-income individuals, especially the elderly and disabled. They live in homes that desperately need repairs, or sometimes they need to be demolished and rebuilt. If you lose these funds, it could be devastating for some of the citizens that would have otherwise been applicable for this. CDBG grants, if you were to lose that funding. It would limit the growth in your county if water systems could not be built. It impact the economy of rural areas. Possible loss of funding or construction of community centers, senior citizen centers. Also, there are some CDBG grants for ambulances and fire protection. You need those. If your local government needs those, you can't afford to pay for these things that you get grant money for. And what about FEMA? Counties can't afford to pay for restoration costs. These disasters, we've received millions. The counties can't afford to go in and pay for all the debris removal and restoring the county roads and highways. Ice storms, you couldn't afford to get the roads cleared where people could get the medical treatment and attention they needed in emergency situations. Ultimately, if you lose your federal funding, your citizens are the ones who are going to suffer. The bottom line, any loss of federal funds is going to have a direct impact on your county. These federal funds come with strings attached. If you want federal money, you have to do what the feds require you to do. It's not that hard. A lot of it you're already doing. Keeping track of federal receipts and federal expenditures, designing internal controls to make sure you comply with these laws, complying with the provisions of the grant contracts, and the final point, this is the hardest, preparing financial statements, and that includes your CFA. The auditor's office is having a difficult time performing audits because we don't know what type of audit that you need. Depending on how many funds you spend each year determines what type of audit we will perform. $500,000 is the breaking point. If you spend over $500,000, OMB Circular A-133 requires that you have a federal audit. Well, we can't know how much you spend until you prepare your financial statement and report to us. In the past, the auditor's office has used your records and prepared your financial statement and CFA. Now, change is upon us. Partly we have Enron to thank for this. The public was outraged over accounting scandals at Enron, WorldCom, Xerox, and the list goes on a few more times. The problem was the auditors were making management decisions, doing their work, and ultimately making their financial statement look more appealing to investors. Well, when the bubble burst and they all went bankrupt, who paid? The people that had invested, they lost their life savings. As a result, the government stepped in and tightened regulations on what auditors could and could not do. Government auditing standards have also changed. Looking at the timeline, you can see that it takes a little while for this to take effect. Enron happened 2001, 2002, followed by a few other companies. Starting with fiscal year for counties, starting with fiscal year ending 2008 is whenever auditing standards drastically changed. The Yellow Book, which is issued by the Governmental Accountability Office, they're issuing a new revision, or it just came out, and it's going to further tighten what auditors can do for their clients. On the screen, there's an excerpt from the Yellow Book, and it's a mouthful. So what is this really saying? It says the fox can't watch the hen house. Auditors can no longer prepare your financial statements and then audit them. We can't change the past, but starting right now, you can make the commitment to make these changes and to get your county into compliance, to make sure your county doesn't lose out. So what does this mean for you? One, the counties must prepare their own financial statement and CFA. Failure to comply could jeopardize future grants, future funding. There is a county in Oklahoma, and I won't name them, but you should know I would never use your name, but they applied for a grant through the Department of Commerce. And because the last audit report had questioned cost, their grant application was held up. You and I both know with the current economical climate in Washington, these grant funds will dry up and be harder to obtain. And if you have a bad audit report or you weren't taking care of the money they already gave you, it could prevent you from getting future funding. As in the past, the auditor's office is here to help you. If we could, we would continue to do some of these things for you. But our hands are tied also. Let's look at some common questions that I know many of you have. Why is FEMA a bigger problem than other grants? Well, as I said earlier, it's a lot of paperwork. You guys have to use heavy equipment sometimes to bring these boxes to the courthouse for us to look at. Information comes from each district, And I know that you go out here and you do all of this work and you document and I know the thought goes through your mind, what more do you want from me? But the problem is you've got to put all of those numbers, combine all of those numbers into one number on your CFA. We have to know how much in total you've spent for your fiscal year. One thing that we strongly recommend, and you'll hear me say this many times this morning, please put one person in charge of compiling your CFA. It would take less than 3 or 4 hours a month to stay on top of this. But if you put it off until the end of the year, it's going to be a nightmare. Next question, does an OEM audit FEMA projects? No. The auditor's office performs your audit. OEM comes out and monitors some projects. The FEMA rep may even look at some of the documentation you have, but the state auditor's office is the one responsible for performing your audit and reporting to the federal clearinghouse what findings you had and what type of report was issued. And again, a bad audit could impact future federal funds for your county. So what county offices does this affect? Well, it definitely affects the clerk and the treasurer. Your treasurer's the one receiving your money, clerk's the one spending or issuing the purchase orders and getting your bills paid. But it also affects any other office that has anything at all to do with federal funds. It takes a joint effort to get these numbers on your CFA. And we'll go into detail more in that in segment 2. So what do you need to do? Each officer should continue to maintain documentation, but assign one employee to compile your CFA. We are willing to travel to the far reaches of this great state to put on classes to give your commissioner secretary and even a reinforcement to this class additional information on how to prepare your CFA. At the regional classes, we will go over how to prepare a financial statement, how to prepare the CFA, and how to get on the internet and find the regulations and information you need for your grant so you can be in compliance. Our classes are going to be held in Ada, October 13th, Woodward, October 20th, Lawton, November 1st, and we haven't scheduled one for Northeastern Oklahoma, but that is in the works, and it will be on our website soon. We're not throwing you out here in the cold to do this by yourself. You should know that sometimes this is very hard for us also, but we're here to help, just as we always have been. We're always a phone call away. Many of you know that. Well, this concludes the first part of our segment. Does anyone have any questions they would like to ask? Gina.
How does the state auditor help us prepare for this?
How does the state auditor's office help your county prepare the CFA? Well, one thing we can do is we can give you ledgers to help everyone get organized. We can walk you through it. You can call our office with questions. One thing that I'd encourage, it's sometimes hard to find the CFDA number. That's a tracking number for your grant. We look at this stuff often. If you get to the point and you're frustrated, and well, don't get to the point that you're frustrated. Pick up the phone and call us and say, hey, I've got this grant. What's the CFDA number? I need to get it on my CFA. Again, we're just a phone call away. Lois?
On October the 13th at Ada, how do you sign up to go to that class?
That's a very good question. Stephanie.
There's an email address on their handout, and they can just send an email and let them know that they're going to be there, and that way we can get a number of times.
Okay, on this handout, there is an email where you can send in a request to sign up. And again, it would be nice to know ahead of time how many people to expect at each session, because we will be having handouts. It will be a hands-on training. We hope to share with you all the knowledge we have regarding preparing a CFA. Renee.
Who do we contact for information and help with CFA?
Who do you contact for information with help with your CFA? Well, there is always the awarding agency, for instance, OEM can help you with some things, but again, the auditor's office can still provide technical assistance. We can tell you the main points of what you need to do. It's just going to take the county to compile those numbers and tell us what you spent. We can help you get the format together.
The question that was asked before that, please, because I didn't hear the question.
Okay, you know I'm nervous, and the minute I say something, it's completely out of my mind. Okay. How do you sign up for the classes?
Oh, okay.
Was that
I
it?
didn't know what the question was.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. Where?
Who's responsible
Yes,
for
sir.
preparing the CEPA?
Who's responsible for preparing the CEPA? The county is responsible, and I would like to point out, the county has always been responsible. The auditor's office has just done this for you. And like I said, only because of auditing standard, or changes to auditing standards, now we can no longer do that. Okay?
What are question costs and why are they a problem?
What are question costs and why are they a problem? Well, and we will get more into this in the CEPA section, but question costs is the amount of money that we found during an audit that you didn't spend it the way the feds required according to their compliance requirements. When do you prepare the reports? Well, as you know, your fiscal year is July 1st to June 30th, your budget year. These reports, if you compile them as you go, they can be put together very quickly, and we would like to have them by August 1st. Who's responsible for maintaining the supporting documentation for the CEPA? Again, this is going to take every officer and their deputies. Whoever is awarded the grant, for instance, a CDBG grant, usually those are going to fall under the county clerk's office. They're going to be the ones that have all of those folders and documentations of where they've been approved through the minutes of the Board of County Commissioners. Now, I say that before anybody throws anything at me. Sometimes commissioner secretaries are responsible. It really depends on the grant, who has their hands on it more than anybody, who's more familiar with it. And really, it needs to be someone the Board of County Commissioners designates for that grant to maintain the documentation for it, but there also needs to be someone appointed by the Board of County Commissioners that's going to compile all of this information at the end of the fiscal year.
So we haven't been keeping these records as a treasurer. We do keep them, you know, as they come in on miscellaneous receipts and stuff like that. So do we need to go back from when we start this audit, or do we need to start now? Or do we need to go back to where you have an audit and try to bring it up to date?
Well, one of the, it's gonna be hard to repeat that question. Yes, I will. Her question was, what's my question? Oh, tell me one more time.
Okay. What I was wondering is, like, do we start keeping the records from now, or do we need to go back to do, like, if we haven't been audited in 07, 08, go back and retrieve those records?
Okay.
And do it on the ledger? So
Lois's question is, well, it's no secret, we're behind. Some of you have 3 or 4 audits that have not been performed. Her question is, do I start now and go forward and start getting this information together, or does she need to go all the way back? My response is this: if you've not had an audit of your federal money, then you need one. You need to be reporting the CEPA to the auditor's office, where we know whether we need to do an A133 audit or whether we can just do an operational audit. Now, the best thing to do would be to get everything current right now, and as you can, work backwards. You will hear from us very soon about the audit, and we are going to need the information for all of those years that have not been audited.
And see, like right now, the clerk may have had to turn in the FEMA audits, and I don't know it, you know, but I know that I have not kept financial.
The most important thing, Lois's point was that the clerk may have turned something in that she didn't know about.
Mm-hmm.
This takes communication between offices. One office cannot do it. It takes every one of you. And so it really needs to be everyone working together and making sure that you've got everything on that CFA. And then I recommend that the clerk and the treasurer and the chairman of the board sign this schedule. You could even approve it in a commissioners meeting so that it's official.
Thank you.
I just want to ask that when you're saying it's a responsibility of the county, District 1, District 2, District 3 for the commissioners could keep this on a running basis and then submit that to the commissioner secretary or whoever. They compile this, give it to the county clerk and the treasurer and see if everything's
That's exactly right, and we will go over that more in segment 2. Her point was that on this handout, there is a ledger here, or there is a little worksheet. And for those of you who did not get a handout, this is already posted on our website, and if you don't feel comfortable getting on there, please come tell me and I will make sure you get a copy. This ledger is for each barn to keep, or even if the sheriff gets FEMA. Whoever gets FEMA, this ledger is for each barn to keep. They have to have ledgers of what all project worksheets have been awarded to them. Right now, we're just finding project worksheets in folders and there are no ledgers. They couldn't tell you how much in FEMA they spent. They just know that there's a project and this is what we did on it. A ledger would be very beneficial to you in order to keep track of your records. And again, it would be helpful for the person handling the grant to do this, and at the end of the year or even monthly, they could turn this in to the clerk's office or the treasurer, whoever is going to be responsible for compiling the CFA, and it would make that person's responsibility a lot easier. We have a question back here.
When did the law change from the auditor's office doing it to the county? When did that?
Okay, the question was, when did the law change from the auditor's office doing this to the county doing it? It didn't. The law was always that you would do it. It's not changed. What changed is the government tightened the regulations on what an auditor could do.
When did that happen?
After the Enron scandals, I would say that the auditing standards started changing around that time. There was the June 2007 Yellow Book, got a little stricter on the independent standard, and the 2011 handbook that just came out is even more stricter. Even stricter, sorry, bad grammar.
How's it work with BIA money or the IR for roads and county works and tribes?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Does this affect the BIA money or when we're working with tribes? How will this affect us, or is this strictly FEMA because those are federal dollars?
No, it affects every federal grant. One thing I will say about BIA, there was a time in the last few years that the contracts the county signed did not mention that you required that money to be audited. The new contracts that you are seeing do have that requirement. But federal funds are federal funds. Chica.
Can you send us report to the Oklahoma City office?
It would be better to send the CFA report and your financial statement to your district office. I think most of you are familiar with which auditor's office does your audit. So yes, that's the one, just the same place you would send your monthly report each month. Is everybody ready for a break? Okay, one more question. How long do you have to maintain the records after the audit? There is some wording that this is a confusing point, but there is wording that in OMB Circular A133 that audit work papers should be maintained 3 years after reporting to the federal clearinghouse. Okay. Yes.
Why can't we use the same number all the way through the project? All the voters wait for it to check. We don't know what project to apply.
That is a problem. Okay, repeat that one more time so I can. Why does FEMA not use the same number all the way through the project from beginning to end? Are you meaning the project work?
And identify on the remittance check.
and identify it on the remittance check. It's very difficult. And I do know what you're talking about because I have had to trace some of this from a project worksheet down to when all I had was a state of Oklahoma warrant, trying to figure out what that went to. It is very difficult. I do think that if you would implement these ledgers that we have available, it will make a world of difference. And I think I encourage you to attend that regional class for some more information. I can't change what FEMA does. I can't change the tracking process. I can only help you on this end to get organized and be able to compile that CEPA.
Oftentimes, direct deposits come in to the banks. We don't even know what they're for. We're notified by the bank on our, that we have had this much money, but we have no idea what it's for or who it even came from.
And these are FEMA payments?
Could be anything. Yes, including FEMA.
I do know that's a problem. I do know that if you use this ledger, if a commissioner is utilizing this ledger,
That would help.
and he has down over here that he's expecting a
Right.
receipt, and he knows how much, he may be able to give you a heads up on that.
Good point.